In 1954, a 73-year-old man stood in the Egyptian desert, screaming commands at 14,000 extras through a megaphone, while his heart was actively failing inside his chest. Doctors had told him to stop. His producers had begged him to delegate. His own body was betraying him with every beat. But Cecil B. DeMille refused to die before he finished telling the story of Moses. What unfolded over the next 2 years wasn't just filmmaking, it was controlled insanity, a production so massive, so dangerous, and so riddled with bizarre incidents that crew members genuinely began to wonder if they were being tested by forces beyond their pay grade. Venomous snakes escaped their handlers. Actors nearly drowned in mechanical seas. A plague scene was scrapped because audiences laughed at God's wrath. And somewhere in the chaos, decisions were made that would accidentally influence Supreme Court rulings, inspire heavy metal anthems, and leave props scattered across the Star Trek universe decades later. This is the story behind Hollywood's most sacred epic, and the 20 strange truths that prove making the 10 Commandments was anything but holy. Fact 1. The director defied death twice and kept filming anyway. Cecil B. DeMille wasn't supposed to survive the 10 Commandments. In October 1954, while directing the massive Exodus sequence at the Paramount backlot, the 73-year-old director suffered a massive heart attack. Not a minor episode, a full cardiac event that sent him crumpling against his chair, while thousands of costumed extras waited in the blazing California heat. His personal physician, Dr. Max Jacobson, rushed to the set and delivered a grim ultimatum: stop filming immediately or die. DeMille's response became a Hollywood legend. He looked at the doctor and said, "I'm going to finish this picture, or I'll die trying." He meant it literally. Against all medical advice, DeMille returned to directing just 48 hours later. He installed a special elevated platform with a built-in chair so he could sit while commanding the set. He hired additional assistant directors to handle physical tasks, but he never once handed over creative control. The production suffered another major scare in Egypt when DeMille collapsed again on the steps of an ancient temple. Each time, he recovered. Each time, he refused to quit. The man who had built his career directing biblical epics seemed determined to become a martyr for his final masterpiece. When the film premiered in 1956, audiences had no idea they were watching a movie that had nearly killed its creator twice. Fact 2. 14,000 extras created logistical nightmares that bordered on warfare. When DeMille announced he would film the Exodus sequence using real crowds instead of camera tricks, his production team thought he'd lost his mind. The director demanded 14,000 extras for a single sequence, more human beings than most small towns contained in 1955. Organizing them became a military operation. The production hired former Army logistics officers to manage crowd movements. They constructed a tent city in the Egyptian desert with its own medical facilities, kitchens, and sanitation systems. Feeding 14,000 people 3 meals a day required a supply chain that rivaled actual military campaigns. But the real nightmare was communication. In an era before wireless technology, DeMille commanded his extras through an elaborate system of colored flags, megaphones, and relay runners. When he wanted the crowd to move left, assistants would sprint through the masses, physically redirecting confused extras who couldn't hear instructions over the desert wind. One particularly chaotic day saw 300 extras wandering in the wrong direction for nearly an hour because a flag signal was misinterpreted. Another incident involved a stampede when extras in the back mistook a lunch call for an action cue. The footage DeMille captured was revolutionary. The process of capturing it was barely controlled chaos that tested human organizational limits. Fact 3. A King Cobra's escape turned the set into genuine pandemonium. DeMille insisted on authenticity in every frame, which meant using live animals whenever possible, including venomous snakes. For the scene where Moses' staff transforms into a serpent, the production acquired a live king cobra from an Egyptian snake handler. The cobra was supposedly trained to remain docile under bright lights. It wasn't. During the third take, the cobra slipped its handler's control and began moving rapidly toward toward the camera crew. What followed was approximately 45 minutes of absolute terror. Extras screamed and fled in every direction. Equipment was abandoned. Several crew members climbed lighting rigs to escape the ground. One cameraman reportedly locked himself inside a wooden crate. The snake handler eventually recaptured the Cobra using a combination of patience and what witnesses described as insane bravery. But the incident fundamentally changed how the production handled dangerous animals. All subsequent snake scenes used either defanged specimens or cleverly disguised rubber replicas, a compromise DeMille accepted only because his insurance company threatened to cancel the production's coverage entirely. The footage from before the escape, however, made it into the final film. That genuine terror you see in the extras' eyes, it wasn't acting. Fact 4. The parting of the Red Sea required 6 months of engineering and 30 seconds of gelatin. Every film historian agrees. The parting of the Red Sea in the Ten Commandments remains one of cinema's greatest practical effects. What they rarely mention is how absurdly simple and simultaneously complex the solution actually was. Special effects supervisor John P. Fulton spent 6 months engineering the sequence. His team constructed 2 massive water tanks at Paramount Studios, each capable of holding thousands of gallons. The water was thickened with industrial gelatin to give it weight and texture, the same substance used in Jell-O desserts, just in quantities that could fill a swimming pool. The actual parting was achieved through reversal. Fulton's team filmed the tanks draining, water rushing together toward the center. When the footage was played backward, audiences saw water appearing to separate and rise into towering walls. The spray and mist were added using compressed air cannons and careful timing. But here's what made it revolutionary. Fulton layered this footage over live-action shots of Charlton Heston walking through a physical corridor with massive dump tanks on either side, creating a composite that seamlessly blended practical and optical effects. The entire sequence, over 4 minutes of screen time, cost more than many entire films of the era. Audiences in 1956 had never seen anything like it. Many struggled to believe it wasn't actual divine intervention captured on camera. Fact 5. Audrey Hepburn lost the role of Nefertiti over physical measurements. In 1954, Audrey Hepburn was one of the most sought-after actresses in Hollywood. Fresh off her Oscar-winning performance in Roman Holiday, she seemed a natural choice for Princess Nefertiti, the Egyptian queen who battles for Moses' love. She auditioned. DeMille was impressed by her elegance and screen presence. Then came the costume tests. DeMille had specific requirements for Nefertiti. The character needed to embody Egyptian sensuality, voluptuous, commanding, and visually imposing in the elaborate beaded costumes designed for the role. Hepburn's slender frame simply couldn't fill the ornate garments the way DeMille envisioned. His production notes, later discovered by biographers, contained the brutal assessment: exquisite actress, insufficient figure. The role went to Anne Baxter instead, whose fuller physique satisfied DeMille's visual demands. Hepburn reportedly took the rejection gracefully, but film historians have speculated about how different the film, and perhaps Hepburn's subsequent career, might have been had DeMille prioritized acting talent over physical measurements. Baxter's performance ultimately earned mixed reviews. Some critics praised her sensuality. Others found her portrayal too overtly sexual for a biblical film. Either way, the casting decision that eliminated Audrey Hepburn remained one of DeMille's most controversial choices. Fact 6. The Frog Plague was filmed, completed, and then destroyed because audiences laughed. DeMille shot footage for all 10 biblical plagues, intending to show each one devastating Egypt in sequence. The Plague of Frogs received particular attention. Handlers released hundreds of live frogs onto elaborate palace sets, allowing them to hop across throne rooms, crawl over dining tables, and generally create amphibian chaos. The footage was technically impressive. DeMille spent 3 weeks capturing different angles, different frog behaviors, and different reactions from Egyptian extras pretending to be horrified. When assembled, the sequence ran approximately 4 minutes. Then came the test screenings. Audiences in Pasadena and Glendale didn't scream in horror. They laughed. Something about watching dignified Egyptian courtiers react in terror to hopping frogs struck viewers viewers as unintentionally hilarious. The harder the actors tried to sell the horror, the funnier it became. DeMille was devastated. He had invested significant resources into the frog sequence, convinced it would showcase the breadth of God's wrath. Instead, it undermined the film's dramatic tension. After 3 disastrous screenings, he made the painful decision to cut the entire sequence. The frog plague was reduced to a brief mention in dialogue. The footage was never released. Some film historians believe prints may still exist in Paramount's archives, but the studio has never confirmed its survival. Fact 7. Brynner underwent grueling physical transformation to match Charlton Heston. Brynner faced an impossible physical challenge, portraying Ramesses as Moses' equal when standing beside Charlton Heston, who towered at 6'3" with the physique of a classical sculpture. Brynner stood 5'8" on a good day. Without intervention, every confrontation scene would make Pharaoh look like a child arguing with a giant. Brynner's solution involved months of intense physical training. He worked with studio trainers to build his upper body, adding muscle mass to his chest, shoulders, and arms. He practiced standing in positions that maximized his physical presence, feet planted wide, chin elevated, arms positioned to create visual width. The production also employed camera tricks. Directors of photography used low angles when shooting Brynner, making him appear taller. Platform shoes hidden beneath his Egyptian sandals added inches. In scenes where both actors stood together, Brynner often stood on hidden risers, while Heston stood in slight depressions. The psychological battle was equally intense. Brynner reportedly studied actual pharaonic imagery, adopting poses from ancient Egyptian art to make his body language feel authentically royal. His portrayal of Ramesses became iconic, not because he physically dominated Heston, but because his fierce intensity made audiences forget the height difference entirely. Fact 8. A human skull was hidden in the Death Angel sequence. The plague of the firstborn presented a creative challenge. How do you visualize death itself moving through Egypt? DeMille's solution was the creeping death sequence, an eerie green mist that seeps through Egyptian streets, entering homes and claiming victims. Visual effects artists enhanced the sequence with a disturbing addition. Embedded within the swirling green fog, barely visible to conscious perception, was the image of an actual human skull. The effect was subliminal. Audiences couldn't point to a specific frame and identify the skull, but their subconscious registered its presence. Test audiences reported feeling inexplicably uneasy during the sequence, describing sensations of dread that exceeded what the visuals seemed to justify. The subliminal skull created psychological discomfort without viewers understanding why. DeMille considered this a triumph. He wanted the Death Angel to feel genuinely threatening, not like a special effect. The technique was controversial even within the production. Some crew members felt it crossed an ethical line, manipulating audiences through subconscious imagery. DeMille dismissed these concerns. He believed cinema should affect viewers on every level, conscious and otherwise. The skull remained in the final cut, hidden in plain sight, unsettling audiences who never knew exactly what they were seeing. Fact 9. Charlton Heston voiced both Moses and God. The burning bush scene required a voice for the Almighty, someone whose vocal presence could convey divine authority without overwhelming the intimate nature of Moses' revelation. DeMille auditioned dozens of voice actors. None satisfied him. The voices were either too theatrical or too ordinary, never achieving the ethereal quality he imagined. The solution came from an unlikely source, Charlton Heston himself. DeMille directed Heston to record dialogue for God, then sent the recordings to sound engineers with unusual instructions. They lowered the pitch, added layers of echo and reverb, and mixed multiple tracks together until the voice sounded like it originated from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The result was philosophically fascinating. Moses, kneeling before the burning bush, essentially converses with himself, or at least with his own transformed voice. DeMille saw this as theologically meaningful rather than technically convenient. The divine voice emerging from Moses' own vocal cords suggested that God speaks through humanity, that revelation comes from within as much as from above. Audiences in 1956 had no idea they were hearing Heston twice in the same scene. The secret was kept until decades later, when sound engineers who worked on the film began discussing the technical process in interviews. Fact 10. Moses' robes accidentally matched ancient Levite priestly colors. Costume designer Edith Head selected Moses' primary robe colors based purely on aesthetic considerations. The red, white, and black striped garment photographed beautifully in Technicolor and provided visual contrast against the Egyptian gold and blue, dominating other scenes. Years after the film's release, biblical scholars made an startling discovery. The color combination Head had chosen, red, white, and black, corresponded exactly to traditional Levite priestly garments described in historical Jewish texts. Moses, according to biblical genealogy, belonged to the Levite tribe. His cinematic costume accidentally matched the ceremonial colors his real historical counterpart would have worn. Head had never researched Levite traditions. DeMille never requested historical accuracy for Moses' wardrobe. The correspondence appeared to be pure coincidence. 3 colors chosen for visual appeal that happened to align with centuries-old religious convention. Religious viewers interpreted this differently. Some saw the coincidence as evidence of divine guidance in the film's creation. Others viewed it as confirmation that archetypal patterns repeat themselves across human creativity. Whatever the explanation, the accidental historical accuracy added an unexpected layer of authenticity to Heston's portrayal. Fact 11. Popcorn became the wrath of God. The hailstorm plague required thousands of projectiles falling from above, striking Egyptian buildings and citizens. Real ice would injure actors. Artificial materials looked fake under Technicolor lighting. The special effects team needed something that could be thrown repeatedly at performers without causing harm, something lightweight that would photograph convincingly as frozen projectiles. Their solution was absurdly simple. Popcorn. Thousands of popcorn kernels were popped, painted white and gray, then dropped from platforms above the set. Combined with dramatic lighting, thunder sound effects, and actors selling their terror, the humble snack transformed into divine punishment. Between takes, crew members swept up the scattered popcorn, collected it in buckets, and reused it for subsequent shots. The economics were remarkable. Popcorn cost virtually nothing compared to manufactured props. It could be produced in massive quantities on short notice. When kernels were damaged or crushed, replacements were ready within hours. DeMille reportedly laughed when he learned the solution, appreciating the irony of a concession stand staple becoming biblical wrath. Audiences in 1956 never suspected the hailstorm sequence remains one of the film's most visually impressive plague depictions, all achieved with a snack food, paint, and creative camera work. Fact 12. Baby Moses, floating on the Nile, was Charlton Heston's actual son. The opening sequence required an infant Moses floating in a basket on the Nile, a vulnerable child drifting toward destiny. Casting a baby presented unique challenges. Infants are unpredictable, easily frightened by film equipment, and incapable of taking direction. DeMille needed a baby who could remain calm, surrounded by cameras, lights, and dozens of crew members. Charlton Heston offered his own 3-month-old son, Fraser Clark Heston. The suggestion was partly practical. Fraser had already spent time on sets visiting his father and seemed unbothered by production chaos. But the symbolic resonance wasn't lost on anyone. The man playing Moses would watch his actual flesh and blood portray Moses' infant form, generations of the same family playing generations of the same character. Filming required careful safety measures. The basket was anchored by invisible wires. Crew members stood just off camera, ready to retrieve Fraser instantly if anything went wrong. The Nile water was actually a carefully temperature-controlled studio tank. Fraser performed perfectly. His calm demeanor and occasional curious expressions gave the sequence unexpected emotional weight. Audiences watching the basket drift saw genuine innocence, not a theatrical performance. For Charlton Heston, those scenes became deeply personal, his son literally embodying the role that would define his father's career. Fact 13. The golden calf sequence required 3 weeks of filming and nearly broke the cast. DeMille envisioned the golden calf worship scene as the film's descent into chaos, a bacchanalia of dancing, drinking, and moral collapse. Achieving that vision required 3 consecutive weeks of filming the same frenzied sequence from dozens of angles. For the extras and supporting cast, those 3 weeks became genuine torture. Temperatures on the Paramount backlot regularly exceeded 100 degrees. Elaborate costumes trapped heat against bodies. The choreography demanded constant movement, dancing, writhing, simulating simulating orgiastic celebration for hours at a stretch. Dehydration and heat exhaustion became daily occurrences. Medical staff treated dozens of performers each day. Morale collapsed midway through the second week. Extras began muttering complaints loud enough for microphones to capture. One frequently repeated phrase became legendary. "Who do you have to sleep with to get out of this picture?" The bitter joke spread through the cast, a gallows humor response to seemingly endless suffering. DeMille pushed forward regardless. He believed the exhaustion would translate on screen, that genuinely depleted performers would create authentic desperation in their movements. Whether he was right remains debatable. The finished sequence does possess a feverish, almost hallucinatory quality. The cost was a cast that genuinely suffered for their art. Fact, Cheddar Pad Smith, an actress's insult, accidentally became the film's most human moment. During one particularly brutal day filming the Golden Calf sequence, an exhausted actress reached her breaking point. Standing under scorching lights, sweat destroying her elaborate makeup, she muttered what she thought was a private complaint. "When is that filthy, bald old man going to let us break for lunch?" She didn't realize her microphone was live. Her words broadcast across the entire set through the speaker system. Hundreds of cast and crew members froze. Every eye turned toward Cecil B. DeMille, the notoriously temperamental director whose gleaming bald head was now the subject of very public ridicule. DeMille was known for volcanic rages that could end careers. The actress looked genuinely terrified, certain she had just destroyed her professional future. DeMille paused. The silence stretched painfully. Then the 74-year-old director touched his bald scalp, smiled, and shouted one word into his megaphone: "Lunch!" The set erupted in relieved laughter. The actress burst into tears of relief. For one brief moment, the tyrannical perfectionist revealed himself as a human being capable of self-deprecating humor. Cast members who witnessed the incident described it as the single most memorable moment of the entire production. Not any grand miracle sequence, but an old man choosing grace over anger. Fact 15. Over 4,000 stone tablets sparked a constitutional crisis 50 years later. Paramount's marketing department conceived an ambitious promotional campaign. Erect stone monuments inscribed with the 10 Commandments in public spaces across America. Between 1955 and 1957, over 4,000 granite tablets were installed in parks, courthouse lawns, and government plazas from California to Maine. DeMille supported the campaign enthusiastically, viewing it as moral education disguised as movie promotion. Local governments welcomed the monuments as community landmarks. For decades, the tablets stood without controversy, weathering quietly in public spaces. Then came the lawsuits. Beginning in the 1990s, civil liberties organizations challenged the monuments as unconstitutional government endorsement of religion. The tablets, they argued, violated separation of church and state by displaying religious text on public property. Communities that had accepted the monuments as harmless nostalgia suddenly faced expensive legal battles. The controversy reached the Supreme Court in 2005. In Van Orden versus Perry, the court ruled that a 10 Commandments monument in Texas could remain, citing its historical and cultural significance alongside its religious content. The decision was narrow and complex, satisfying neither side completely. A movie marketing gimmick from 1956 had accidentally shaped American constitutional law. DeMille never imagined his promotional tablets would become legal precedents. He died in 1959, long before the controversy erupted. Fact 16. Egyptian props traveled through time to Star Trek's 24th century. After principal photography wrapped, the 10 Commandments left behind warehouses full of Egyptian props, golden goblets, ornate vessels, carved decorations, and ceremonial objects crafted with extraordinary detail. Paramount stored everything, recognizing the potential value for future productions. Those props waited decades for their next appearance. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, production designers for Star Trek: The Next Generation faced a familiar challenge, creating elaborate alien civilizations on television budgets. They raided Paramount's prop archives, discovering treasures from dozens of classic films. The 10 Commandments props proved surprisingly versatile. Egyptian goblets became Klingon drinking vessels. Ceremonial objects decorated alien temples. Carved decorations appeared in ambassadorial quarters across the galaxy. Sharp-eyed viewers occasionally spotted familiar items, a distinctive vessel from Pharaoh's palace appearing on a starship centuries in the fictional future. The recycling was practical, not sentimental, but the result created a strange continuity across Paramount's history. Objects crafted to represent ancient Egypt found second lives representing civilizations that hadn't been imagined when the Ten Commandments was filmed. Moses' world accidentally furnished the final frontier. Fact 17. Disney Animators secretly created the film's divine miracles. The Ten Commandments required visual effects beyond anything previously attempted. The burning bush that consumed nothing, divine fire writing commandments on stone, the pillar of flame guiding the Israelites. DeMille knew live-action techniques couldn't achieve these visions alone. His solution was unconventional. Hired Disney Animators. Paramount secretly contracted artists from Walt Disney Studios, bringing in veterans who had worked on Fantasia and other groundbreaking animated features. These animators understood how to create impossible imagery, fire that behaved supernaturally, light that seemed genuinely divine, movements that defied physics while remaining visually coherent. The collaboration was kept quiet. DeMille didn't want audiences thinking of cartoons when they watched biblical miracles. The animators worked in isolated facilities, their contributions integrated so seamlessly that viewers couldn't identify where live action ended and animation began. The burning bush sequence exemplifies their work. Flames dance across branches without consuming them, casting light that illuminates Moses' face with otherworldly warmth. Every frame was hand-painted, layered over live-action footage through painstaking optical processes. Disney's magic, hidden inside DeMille's vision, made the impossible appear photographically real. Fact 18. Metallica's Creeping Death was born from a late-night viewing. In 1983, three young musicians sat in a cramped California apartment watching a VHS tape of the Ten Commandments. James Hetfield, Lars Ulrich, and Cliff Burton weren't seeking spiritual enlightenment. They were killing time between rehearsals, half watching a film none of them had seen completely. Then the Death Angel sequence began. The green mist crept across Egyptian streets, seeping under doors, claiming firstborn sons. Cliff Burton, the band's bassist, watched the imagery and muttered two words that would become heavy metal history: creeping death. Hetfield and Ulrich immediately recognized the phrase's potential. Within weeks, they had constructed a song around the concept, a thrash metal retelling of the Exodus plagues from the Angel of Death's perspective. The chorus invited audiences to chant "Die" repeatedly, transforming concert venues into ritualistic experiences. Creeping Death became one of Metallica's most beloved tracks, a staple of their live performances for 4 decades. The song introduced millions of metal fans to biblical imagery they might never have encountered otherwise. A 1956 religious epic accidentally inspired one of heavy metal's defining anthems, proof that art's influence travels in directions creators never anticipate. Fact 19. A future Grammy legend played drums as an anonymous extra. Somewhere in the golden calf sequence, visible for perhaps 3 seconds, a 21-year-old extra sits beating a drum. The camera captures his back, his hands, the rhythm of his movements. No dialogue, no close-up, no screen credit, just another anonymous body filling DeMille's vision of Israelite chaos. That anonymous drummer was Alpert. In 1956, Alpert was nobody, a young musician taking extra work to pay bills while pursuing his dreams. The Ten Commandments gig paid union scale and required minimal effort. He showed up, beat a drum, went home. The experience left no particular impression. 8 years later, Alpert founded the Tijuana Brass and became one of the most successful musicians of the 1960s. His trumpet playing and distinctive sound earned multiple Grammy Awards. He co-founded A&M Records, building an entertainment empire. He became one of the few artists to achieve #1 hits as both a vocalist and instrumentalist. The anonymous drummer became a legend, but if you freeze frame the golden calf sequence at precisely the right moment, you can glimpse the future. A young man whose hands would eventually shape American popular music, temporarily employed as background background decoration in someone else's biblical vision. Fact 20. Crew members reported seeing a mysterious white figure in the Egyptian desert. During location filming in Egypt, multiple crew members reported an inexplicable sighting in the shimmer of desert heat, standing motionless among the dunes. A figure in white robes appeared to observe the production. Witnesses described the figure as unnaturally still, watching the massive undertaking with what they perceived as solemn attention. Then, between one glance and the next, the figure vanished. Reports circulated quietly among the crew. Some dismissed the sightings as heat mirages, optical illusions created by exhaustion and scorching temperatures. Others noted that multiple witnesses, working in different locations, described remarkably similar experiences: a robed figure, pure white garments, absolute stillness, sudden disappearance. DeMille heard the rumors and reportedly smiled without comment. Whether he believed the accounts or simply appreciated their contribution to the production's mythology remains unknown. He never addressed the sightings publicly. Skeptics offer rational explanations: desert mirages, local Bedouins in traditional dress, collective hallucination fueled by the production's religious subject matter. Believers suggest something else, that a film recreating sacred history might attract attention from forces beyond ordinary perception. The white figure was never photographed. No footage captured the apparition. It exists only in the testimony of crew members who swore they witnessed something unexplainable in the Egyptian sands. The Ten Commandments wrapped production in 1956, having consumed 3 years, $13 million, and the physical health of its creator. Cecil B. DeMille lived just long enough to see his masterpiece become the highest-grossing film of its era, beloved by audiences who had no idea how much chaos, danger, and strangeness lay behind every frame. Consider the accumulation of coincidences. A costume designer accidentally selects colors matching ancient Levite tradition. A director insists on filming in locations where crew members witness inexplicable apparitions. A death sequence embeds subliminal imagery that disturbs audiences without their conscious awareness. Every practical decision seems to align with something larger, something the filmmakers couldn't have planned. DeMille himself seemed to sense it. In his final years, he spoke about the Ten Commandments differently than his other films. He described feeling guided during production, as though the story itself demanded to be told correctly. He never claimed divine intervention directly. He was too pragmatic for that, but his language suggested something beyond ordinary filmmaking had occurred. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe exhaustion and desert heat created collective delusions. Maybe a dying man simply wanted his final work to mean something beyond entertainment. The Ten Commandments remains Hollywood's most watched biblical epic, broadcast every Easter to audiences who experience it as sacred tradition. But was it created by Hollywood craftsmen or merely through them? That's a question Cecil B. DeMille took to his grave, and 67 years later, we're still not sure we want the answer. If these secrets surprised you, let us know in the comments which fact shocked you most. Like this video if you want more untold Hollywood stories. Subscribe so you never miss our next investigation into cinema's strangest truths. Because behind every classic film, there's a story stranger than fiction, and we're just getting started.